Tonight we're talking with Rex, and I'm not talking about myself. We have Rex Kozlowski here, and he spent several decades frequenting several areas in northern Utah that are inhabited by Sasquatch. Some of these same places Nathan Reo visited many years later, so Rex also watched Nathan's activities with interest. At one point, Mr. Kozlowski also advised the cast and crew of Finding Bigfoot when they visited Utah. Finding Bigfoot captured their only successfully filmed reply vocalization. He's been described by Bobo or James Fay from Finding Bigfoot as really knowing his stuff. Hello there, Rex. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine.
Okay.
It's whatever. We've tried this before, but yeah.
Right. I wanted to add that this is actually the fourth evening we've tried to record this interview. We've had technical difficulties that plagued us, and although I won't bore everybody with all the details here, but yeah, we've been at this before, and anyways, hopefully it'll record properly. Well, did you want to go ahead and begin with your first memories and experiences as we've done in the past?
Yeah, since we've done this before, we pretty well
Okay. Yeah, we should
know the drill.
So how did you get started with the realization that Bigfoot were indeed found in the woods of the area where you lived?
Okay, well, we moved when I was 12 or 11 to Morgan up Weaver Canyon. Across the street was sagebrush. I mean, I went right across the street with the hills, and I'd just go up any time. And I was always an outdoor kid. I mean, literally, the nearest kid my age was 3 miles one way, you know. But I'd go up in the hills with the dogs. All the neighborhood dogs that go up with me, they're all collies. I was just into wildlife. I was going to be a fish and gamey when I grew up. And I talked to every fishing game I knew or met, whatever. Got into all the people with the trappers and everything else. When I got my senior year, I even went with the state trapper, the first one that went in the helicopter to shoot coyotes. But that's just the kind of, I mean, I was pure outdoors.
But so you spent a lot of hours, I imagine, getting to know your surroundings out there.
Yeah, I was more animal. I was human. I mean, I was up there all the time. I could imitate noises and whatnot. My dad would come up to go hunting. I would spot deer anywhere, and these guys ended up calling me the Eyes. So at Hillfield, I was famously known as the Eyes. We went and visited there, and that's Eyes. I just learned to spot deer and everything else. I going deer hunting. With camos on and a buck scent, and one day I seen him. I mean, he was hunting, and I followed a buck and a doe right in the open. I just go slow and then stay in the same spot, and every time they looked, they wouldn't notice anything. Ended up falling into a little hollow, and there were deer everywhere. There was probably 30 or 40 deer, and they'd all come together. And all of a sudden, I hear this is in the summer, big trashy noise. And crap, a cow's coming through. It's going to scare them all. It was actually 3 4-pointers coming down. They didn't care. It was kind of like out of Bambi. And I had deer I could reach out and touch them, but they couldn't. They just didn't see me.
So the males in there.
That's the kind of person, like I said, that's what I raised so I know animals and how to hunt and sneak up and whatnot.
So you're familiar with anything that lived up there, at least so you thought up to this point, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, I would be a Huckleberry fan. I don't know, Jim Bridger, Huckleberry fan, whatever. But I always go up. Nothing would scare me. If the dogs, you didn't have no feeling whatsoever, you keep going and going. But coming back, I felt like there was something following me. And you just have that feeling. And it happened about every time I'd go up there. And I'd do I did this call with my hands, and do they ever try to call in coyotes, which I had. Coming back, I always seemed to be followed or just felt that feeling. I even got to the point where I doubled back on myself to see what I can catch whatever's sneaking up on me or following me. Never did see anything. And then in the summer, we'd have the windows open, wouldn't have air conditioner. Every now and again, you'd smell the skunk or like a skunk's armpit outside. And it was bad. And I kind of curious, and I looked out the window, couldn't see nothing. Didn't turn the light on or anything. But first time they come around, my dog started barking. Then he shut up real quick. Evidently he seen what they were and went back into his doghouse.
But shocked.
Yeah. Well, the next 2 or 3 times he'd come down there, he didn't do it. He didn't bark anymore. And I wasn't sure what it was for sure. You know, you can only have your guesses because back then nobody knew Bigfoot. Yeah. I realized later on that's what they were. They'd come down there quite regularly. I called the guy 40 years later who lived in the same neighborhood to talk about Bigfoot. And he goes, yeah, I could smell the damn things come by the house. Then I clicked in, hey, that's what they were. And my daughter and I found a tuft of hair, and it smelled just like that. You know, it smelled like a skunk, but it wasn't no skunk. You know, like I said, skunk's armpit. The occurrences with Bigfoot, and I didn't know about it. One of my friends come across one of their nests. This is behind the towers above the lagoon on the east side. And he's trying to describe this. I come across this nest, a pile of brush, kind of like a little cave or hole. It wasn't a bear. I don't know. I didn't see it. It smelled, but I didn't. And we just sit there trying to figure out what it was. Obviously a Bigfoot, but we still didn't dare or even say, you didn't even dare talk about it. Because back then they would have called you nuts. We had 2 guys school that says they saw one, and we just, how drunk were you? It was just, didn't talk about it.
What decade was this, would you say?
This was in the early 70s.
Okay.
The ones they saw was up Hardscrabble. Yeah, the whole strip of mountains there is all, connected. That still is for a while until they develop it. But I didn't really think Bigfoot at all. Like in 77, I'm up hunting on the plateau behind Hardware Ranch. And I'm like 3 miles from my truck. You used to be able to drive up there. Now you can't, except during in the summer. But this was during hunting season, and I drove up there, and then I was going along the ridge tops of each canyon. It was just kind of like a big canyon between 2 major roads.
So you could see everything, probably pretty well, spot things.
Yeah, and if you ever go up Hardware Ranch, just go up left-hand fork. I was in the top of that thing. And I'm up there, and I'm doing coyote calls and that type of stuff. And I did it, and I heard something in the distance, so I repeated it, what they did. And you could hear them back and forth, and they're getting closer and closer. I got them right down about 30 yards or less below me, but they wouldn't show up. I was standing behind a tree. They would cackle, and I'd do the same kind of cackle. And this went on for 20 minutes. It wasn't just a minute or 2, but we did it for about 20 minutes. And they'd probably go, did you hear that? Because I was imitating them, but I wasn't doing the language. They go, huh? And they were trying to get me to come out, and they wouldn't. Finally, I guess they figured out what I was. And I had the 7mm, but I wasn't going to go down over the hill. I'm by myself. And I had no clue what they were. But I got buzzed by them. Buzz is when you get low infrasound, and the hair in my neck stood up, and I'm just going, I should run. After that, all of a sudden, I just took off running, ran for about a mile, and nothing followed me that I know of.
So you got the infrasound treatment. That's when they figured out what you were, who you were.
Once they figured out, I guess I wasn't what they thought. They must have thought I was another Bigfoot. But that night at work, I said, weirdest thing, I heard what I sound like a loon, a coyote, and a chimpanzee combination. 10 years later, I'm in work, and I'd seen UFOs close up. I was talking about them, and he made sure that there was nobody around us at the table. He's kind of looking, he figured if I believe in UFOs, I believe in bush apes. He goes, you ever heard of bush apes? And you could see him look around, make sure nobody heard. I go, what's a bush ape? Bigfoot. I go, what about him? And he goes, he's telling me there's a guy that was up Preston. He got kicked out of Preston because he kept telling everybody there was a Bigfoot up there, and nobody believed him. He says, I went up there partying with him in this place called Sheepherder's Grave, and we got stranded. The car got high-centered, and then you hear the screams or calls around us, and then these things start sneaking up on him. And they get within about 4 or 5 feet of the car, sneaking up, ready to touch it, and they'd turn the engine over. It's the only thing they had to scare the Bigfoot away. And they would do this all night. They did it about every 20 minutes. They'd have to turn the engine over. And he thought, man, what am I, my drugs or what? And he wasn't for sure what was going on. And then when it got light, right above him on the hillside was a big old male sitting there with like the great thinker with his head and his chin just staring at him. And he says, nah, that ain't right. And then he got up and walked away.
So they were stuck all night and saw his hand.
Yeah. So they ran down and they got gas or whatever to come to get their car going. And they come up and the car was smeared with all this white stuff. The same kid, he went up there again with his wife later on. They were hiking. They got about a quarter of a mile from the car. And one of them screeched at him about a quarter mile from him. You know, it was the same distance. That was the last him and his wife went up there. I couldn't get him to go up there for nothing. And I asked him, he says, what'd you guys, he says, yeah, they kept coming into camp and they shot him with 22s shotguns. And I'm going, oh, good. This is great. So I'm pretty sure the Squatch are pissed. I wouldn't want to meet these ones unless they forget real quick, which I doubt. Because like I said,
they've had some bad experiences with humans taking pot shots at them, sounds like.
Yeah.
Just little 22s.
The guy who was with him and got him interested in it says he followed him for 2 weeks, day by day, following him everywhere. They watched one go into a cave. So he ran up to the cave and took a picture real quick. I've never seen it, but my friend says he's got the picture of, well, you could just see a face looking out of the cave. You could just make the details of the face. But that guy basically forced him out of Preston kept telling everybody and they thought he was crazy and he finally left.
Ran him out of town.
He was the first, to me, the original Bigfoot hunter up here. But the guy told me this. So I went up the same area that weekend and it was in the spring. One side of the canyon, the sun was melted all the snow, and the other side, in the north side, is a shade and it was still snow. And I looked down, I seen these tracks going up the hillside. I told my friend, just stop, let me go check these out. Going down the hill, and I noticed a log turned over, a big log, a rock pulled out of the ground. I'm going, fisherman up here looking for grubs. What was he doing up here? And nothing of it. On the hillside where the tracks were and started going up, it's so steep I have to use my hand. And I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just following the tracks down in the snow. These tracks width where the stand or whatever, the gate was about 6 to 8 inches wider or longer than mine. And that's just that's just walking on a hill, climbing up a mountain. So it was definitely 2 foot. On 2 feet. I'm 6'3", and this thing is probably, like I say, another 1.5 feet bigger than I was, just by the gate, how long. And that was my oh wow moment. Whoa, they do exist. From there on out, I've been looking for them. Like I said, I was in school trying to become a fish and game. He ended up in range science, and that didn't work. Well, I was, kind of trained for all that. And my next door neighbor, his dad was the head of the Utah Fish and Game Northern region. If I had a question or whatever, he would, he's kind of told me how they would do it with other animals, break it down and, how many animals they need to have a generic, biodiversity, stuff like that. But like I said, I got the scientific way of doing it, or was trained to.
So he kind of let you know how many animals they wanted in a specific area, and then they would kind of try to manage them and trap them, and then not allow them to be trapped, just depending on the population and how they were doing out there.
Yeah, just like basically a report, a scientific report type. That's just the way I read it, the way I went about it. But then, I think back then, that was in 1980, nobody talked about Bigfoot. And like I said, that kid looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. I didn't know what to do or how to do it. From was or anything else, we've actually went bottom of Franklin Basin all the way over to Willow Flats in the night with our lights turned off on a full moon, just so maybe we could see stuff. If I can get people away from somebody else, they might talk about Bigfoot or their encounters. But I kind of figured out, when I first thought about it, we figured there needed to be around 30 for to have genetic, so they wouldn't be inbred.
Genetic,
so they, a population of at least 30 of them, diversity. That's a genetic diversity.
Yeah.
That was back then. Well, today, when I know a lot of this stuff or what's around, I was pretty close on the money, how many are in the area.
So you've had enough time. I know you've told me there's some families, certain groups and where they're at basically and where they frequent.
Yeah, there's right now, I've know of at least 5 family groups. Maybe they might have been taken out by the government. And I know a couple more that could be. There's areas I just haven't had a chance to hit. Or see, back then, I had no clue if they were going to kill you or how big they were or whatnot. I remember telling people, I don't want to see one close up, but I sure as hell like to see one. But I was talking, why would you want to? Because we didn't know any information. They didn't have the internet.
Well, even now with the information, I'm not sure if I want to see one super close up. I mean, if it were non-threatening, maybe, but first time I think I'd rather see it, the next ridge over or something. But anyway,
yeah,
in the daylight.
I was playing blind. My next encounter with Bigfoot, whatever, I went to that spot where I found the tracks, figured out it's a pass in a trail kind of that crosses the road from one mountain range to the other. And this is kind of like an access way. And it's near that sheepherder's grave. And I couldn't figure why they were there, any particular reason. Till about 3 or 4 years ago, I come in from the top on the mountain and I noticed the whole mountain is rock, flat rock. I mean, it isn't cliffs. It's just, there's no soil. It's just kind of rock. And that's what they love. They don't want to leave tracks. They're very aware of their tracks. That's why you don't see any. But the same group, that first group, the same area, they're the ones where they were making that sound. Me and my daughter went up there and we were surrounded by them. I've heard that sound 3 different times from that group as I went into the area. And it sounded like a woodpecker. Was definitely not woodpeckers, and they're located around us, you know what I mean, with like a diamond shape. They were surrounding us. And then the other time I'd go up there and I'd hear that same sound up farther up the canyon, like they're back or he's back, or there's man. I think that's just their signal for man, that group anyway.
When you were,
I've been up on the top of this area.
Oh, so I was just going to add real quick. When you mentioned the area that has the rock and they're trying to avoid leaving footprints, that reminds you of one place in the U.S. It's not rock at that location, but there's actually a lot of wet pine needles, and it's kind of odd. You can put your foot down and it'll press it down, and it'll be there for about 5 seconds, and then it rises
pops right back
like
up.
A sponge or something. Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead with what you were about to say.
This same group. I don't know if it's the same group, but about 3 miles over the top of the canyon down in towards Logan Canyon, I saw some, look like, some tree breaks and whatnot. And I start walking up there, and sure enough, you hear the same sound again. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that group or family that, at least them, that use that as this man's hair signal.
Yeah, it'd be really convenient to use the woodpecker call because humans would think it's just woodpeckers. And, generally speaking, you're not paying much attention. They're looking for big.
They'll do the elk call, like that. I've heard that when we were, I'll tell you later on at the sheepherder's grave, and my son heard him. Well, might as well tell the story.
Okay. And I've heard, I'll just mention, try to do wolves or coyotes, and then you can tell it's not because there's an explosion sound and then it goes silent as if the animals were never there. But anyway, sorry, go ahead with your story next.
Yeah. A few years ago, me and my son went to the sheepherder's grave. It was coming in off the Franklin Basin, and I was told that the road is open. It's a narrow canyon and the snow fills in a lot. That road opens up in July because it's just so much snow. And me and my son went up there and pulled in the area I thought looked like sheepherder's grave. It's just dusk. There was light, but it was getting dark. We looked up on the hill and you could see a little patch of snow, and there are tracks going in it, fresh tracks. They're about 50 yards away. So I got a branch I carry in my truck and beat on a tree about 3 times. And then I did a couple whistles, and my son goes, "Dad, what?" I goes, "Did you hear that growl?" What? In the bushes. But in the distance, I heard the elk whistle kind of. They're going back and forth. I'm getting old, so I don't hear as good as I used to. Then my son heard the growl again, and he seen the bush move, and it wasn't that far from him. I don't know if they were crawling up or hiding in the bush or whatever. He said, "Dad, let's get the heck out of here." So I was using my other son's truck. It was a 90 Chevy pickup, long bed, 2-wheel drive, and we started down the road. It was kind of like out of a B movie. Here they come, you little monster. And we're trying to get in the vehicle, get it started, and we're heading down the road, And they come around the bend, about 100 yards away from where we started, and there's snow across the road. The road hadn't opened up yet. And it's one of the steepest parts of the canyon, and there's a grapefruit-sized rock all through the road. And that was a two-wheel drive, and it took about 15 attempts to get up that hill backing up. Finally got to a spot where I did a 42-point turn and took off, but that's how, like I said, at the sheepherder's grave, and that's where that guy had him sneaking up on him.
Yeah,
But
kind of a few occasions where I've gotten stuck on a road like that where it's so narrow you don't know how you're going to turn around, but you manage to eventually get out several times and make sure you aren't going to go over the side. But anyway, go ahead.
yeah, that's why. Yeah.
Snow will make it worse, I guess.
The next time I actually come close to a Bigfoot, I'm still guessing where they'd be and everything. And me and my brother were talking about it. It was like a full moon, and he was just visiting Logan, and I told him where to go camp because it's pretty. Nice meadow, pine, and a stream running down the middle of it, pines on both sides. It was a nice spot. And I said, well, you wanted to know a place to camp just for the night? I said, okay, you go up there, you'll like it. And we talked a little bit about Bigfoot and everything. Next day I come back from work and he's there waiting for me. And he goes, did you set me up as a joke? I go, no. He goes, well, he says, make the sound of a bear. And I did. That ain't it. Make the sound of an elk. And I did. And that ain't it. And I milked the sound, coyote. And he says, are you sure you didn't send me up as a joke? He says he went up there camping. He had his tent all set up. And this is where what's-his-face finds all these footprints. I won't say who. Don't give him the credit. But he was camped. And he says about 1 o'clock at night, he heard what he thought was a girl laughing, running through the woods, or just sounded like it. And then it got louder and louder and louder and shrieking. And he says he got fright or flight, or he just don't know whether to run or sit there and kill you. And he said it was about 30 yards away on the other side of the stream calling. And he heard one on the opposite side of the canyon, about a block away. And they went back and forth, full blast long. So evidently they were challenging each other or whatever, talking. But I know that's how I figured out that it's a boundary where they have barriers or whatever, markers or territories. About a month later, after my brother described it to me, and the other brother were just up there driving, and I got out and kind of looked like followed it might be a trail going up the mountain through there, and I'm in flip-flops, and I see these tracks in the mud that had kind of dried up, and all of a sudden, about 10 feet away on the other side of the bush I was standing, I hear a big sniff or whatever. Is either a moose and it weren't no moose. I'd woke one up. It would just lay by the trail. And being in flip-flops and sagebrush, you don't have a good advantage running. But I come down the mountain. My other brother, he's laughing today. He still says, yeah, you come down the mountain, go, Bigfoot, Bigfoot, Bigfoot. But it didn't follow us, luckily. But that was the second encounter. I still didn't know a lot. The internet wasn't around then still. Finally, when the internet did come up, there was I increased my knowledge about 90% of what I, didn't know before. When first thing I did was look up sound of a Bigfoot. And as soon as I heard that, I knew what those three things were 10 years before. I called in three Bigfoot. Then I got it was on the internet, and I was looking up I've been like you get on the internet and you look at anything that was Bigfoot and sites. I found the best one was Facebook Find Bigfoot.
Yeah, that was.
And they're not around today thanks to that scam that they were involved with or whatever.
Yeah, I remember. They put out a lot of content, and yeah, I agree it was good. But anyway. Yeah,
well, I remember they had the Hank scam. They tricked the Find Bigfoot people. Facebook Find Bigfoot.
Yeah, and then the trolls were merciless.
They fell for it because if this thing isn't real, we'll shut down, and it wasn't.
Yeah,
but
they were true to their word, I guess.
The guy Jack Barnes, I was reading the thing on the Facebook site, and I go, well, have you seen the Sobe bomb video? And he goes, yeah, that's one of like our 30th best Bigfoot video. Do you know anything about it? They thought it was Ohio. Turns out, there was guys that I work with, they hung out in Providence. They lived in Providence. They'd go up there all the time in the weekend. And I'd been up there with my wife when we had a big old boulder thrown at us. So I just went up there and I told them, I said, hey, at this time of night, do this call and then take a branch and hit, a tree. Next weekend they come down, I've seen them like to the weekend, like on a Monday, they go, "You son of a bitch, I ain't going up there again." Evidently, they called one in and it chased after him. So, however, a week later, they says, "Hey, we got video on." I go, "Bull crap." "No, we do." And they showed me the video, and it's the Sobe bomb video. I got one of the very first views of it before it got copied, and everything was crystal clear. And I put it on a computer screen and blew it up full size, went frame by frame. It looked like a razorback gorilla, grayback gorilla, except there was like 3 thicknesses of me, and it's been sneaking.
Resolution was a lot better.
What?
I know you said the resolution was a lot better with the original.
Yeah. And I mean, it was clear. You could see the hair. I told them to get a hold of BRFO, and they got a hold back with them. They thought it was cool. The guy that actually had the video hadn't worked with me yet, or he hadn't hired on where I worked, but his 3 friends did. They had on Facebook Finding Bigfoot at the same time. They were doing a documentary. The documentary was trying to get 2 kids from Australia, trying to teach or convince them that Bigfoot existed. And they took them all over the West Coast. And that Jack Barnes says, yeah, we're going up to Meldrum. I says, "Well, I'm on the way. You want me could you stop or whatever?" "Yeah, we'll pick you right up." And to the word, they picked me right up. And we went up they interviewed me on the way. They had a mobile home. We went seeing Meldrum and everything, went to his office, the interview, and we're coming back. They kind of split up, and me and Mr. Barnes went up Providence Canyon. I showed him the Sobe bomb, and we reenacted it. Well, he mentioned, he goes, "Well, this is what you do. Look, they leave a lot of tree sign and whatnot." And I click and it hit my head. "Are you kidding? I haven't been looking. I've been seeing this stuff all the time." But I said, "Yeah, they make fences. They do all sorts of stuff." And right then I started, I woke up. It was like from night to day. I could see Bigfoot sign almost any canyon in Logan because they leave so much. It's just people say, "Oh, there's no sign." And what do you mean that there's no proof? I could take them up any canyon and show them stuff, and right off the side of the road, and you don't have to go hiking for it either.
Yeah, it's just in plain sight, but it's completely hidden from people because it's not what they're looking for. They don't know what it means. And
yeah, I mean, it's just, I've been training a lot of people or showing a lot of people how to look and what to look for. But so that's why I kind of picked up the idea of looking for blinds and all that stuff. Well, then Finding Bigfoot tried to get a hold of the kid with the video. Well, first they wanted me to get a hold of him so they was going to use the video on their show. I told his friends, "Hey, they want him on the show." He didn't believe me. And then the producers had to ask him, tell him, say, "Hey, we are Finding Bigfoot." So that ended up, they come here and got did the show. I was on it a couple times, but the problem was, like I say, a month before, I'd seen eye shine before the show come on. But since it was eye shine, I didn't want to say nothing about it or whatever. But they did it on the worst night of the year for me, which was Black Friday. And I work at a supermarket and department store, and Black Friday is the worst day of the year. And I had to come in on my lunch hour and go do the thing, and I couldn't stay to talk to him or whatever. Yep. Where I did, meet Bobo, Cliff, and Renee, and didn't see Moneymaker. He was up in the hills. But the guy who I found out later that did the Find Bigfoot Facebook, he's a vice president of Apple. The nicest guy in the world. Nice, generous as you can get. Nice, smart.
Yeah, he always came across that way in his videos, I thought, but that's interesting to know. I wonder if he's still vice president or not, but I know he was, I guess, at the time.
I haven't talked to him for about a year. When we went up there was Providence Canyon. It was getting dark, and all of a sudden there were about 8 or 9 guys on Jeeps. There's a top of the canyon, there's a quarry, and these guys on Jeeps, just 8 or 9, just doing circles, going in and out. And he's seen that, and go, "Wow, that's cool." And I go, I wanted him to show the spot right above where we were, where you swear to God it's a Bigfoot hotel. And I couldn't get him to go 30 feet to look. He wanted to stop, and he wouldn't want to leave those guys in the Jeeps. It was kind of frustrating, but yeah.
Yeah, I've had similar things happen where you can lead a horse to water, but, you can't make them drink. It's kind of a similar thing where you're all there, but I don't know, they're just going to do their own thing. But anyway.
Like I say, that kind of enlightened me a lot with seeing all the, everywhere you go, there's evidence. The first big thing evidence, I was hunting. Where I hunt, they had a controlled burn. And I just walked up there, and all the grouse and pine hen were down in the bottom of this canyon that they controlled burn. In front of me, about 100 yards, a magpie flies up, and you hear something take off. I go, oh, crap, is that what I think it is? And I walk up there, and sure enough, there's a pine tree. One of these smaller pines, they're spruce, but they like them. They pull them straight down on the ground and eat off them. There was one right there, and so I dismissed them, and they were probably watching me. And I go, there's a water hole there, and I went up to the water hole, and I'm sitting there, and I look at, that branch looks like it had been pulled there. And then, whoa, that's a blind. It was a Bigfoot blind for jumping the water hole. So it wasn't kids. I knew that.
Yeah,
and that's the
reason for Boy Scouts to make blinds.
Yeah.
The ones that look like that don't look anything like hunter blinds for the most part.
No, they're just like
ramshackle and weird. And
it's kind of like one of Nathan Reo's blinds, and they find a beer can and a bottle with them. They just do that to throw the humans off.
Oh, yeah, just a piece of human trash.
Yeah, you have those balloons.
Yeah,
those like balloons or whatever.
Mylar ones.
They take like they like those for some reason. But yeah, that's when I started seeing stuff. Just after I Mr. Barnes. Yeah, there was so much stuff. By the Elk Valley Guard Station up there. I'm driving out of there, and I look up, and on the top of it's like a billboard. There was a big, like a teepee. But this thing teepee was 40 feet tall, and it was some full-size quakey trees, 3 of them, and they're they're standing against each other, and there's no other quakeys around. I mean, they're just smaller quakeys, 4-foot quakeys, and these are 40 foot, and you can see them across the whole valley. And like they say, oh, there's no evidence. Shit, they got billboards with it.
Yeah, that reminds me of a place. Oh, good.
That same area, the Forest Service had redid a pond. They were fixing the pond, and I didn't think there was any Bigfoot there or that much. And then I look up, and you got to look up there. They hide more stuff up top, and you realize there's all these quakey trees that have been crossing each other. Where you just, it's like not a big cross like you see on like a big X. These are the tips of the trees bent across each other, and I counted like 8 or 9 of these crosses around this pond, and I think they were trying to scare or give us a message: stay away, it's our pond. I don't know if what they're saying, but you can get an idea.
Wonder if it's for other Bigfoot or for us, or who knows who their audience are going for.
I don't know if it's no, because this pond had just been tore up a week before, and they bulldozed everything. I just think they were saying, "Hey, get out of here."
Yeah, that would make more sense. Yeah,
but yeah, that's like I say, that all in one area, and I didn't think there was any there, or there was no reason for them to be there. But now I've kind of figured out they're all through there, everywhere, just in different areas where they leave sign.
Yeah, I think they travel quite a bit when they can get through rough terrain that we pretty efficiently. We just can't.
We don't know why all the reason they do structures, but I think it's either bored and other ones have meanings. Nathan Reo showed a lot of stuff. Everything he was showing, I've seen here. A lot more than I'm thinking of making a calendar just of structures. I think it'd be neat, because I got plenty of pictures of them, and people would see, whoa, normally by each structure by themselves, a lot of times you would that's just tree falling down. But when you find 10 or 12 of the same thing, throughout the forest, that's no coincidence, Yeah,
I think it was like intelligent arrangements. I think I told you, I'll just briefly say this. I emailed Dr. Meldrum. He actually replied back. I sent him a real nice email, and I guess out of courtesy, replied back that I sent him a link of just, basically it was a tree, and it had 7 different dead trunks all laid up on it. And he didn't agree that it was anything special. He said, there's so much deadfall in the area, I don't find it very distinctive, is what his terminology with. But and then I, had to respond back, of course, and I said, well, if it were one or two leans, I could see what you're saying. But to me, when there's seven, it's a higher likelihood that it's intelligent arrangement. And he didn't really respond back to that. He did say earlier he would chew on it and, try to be nice about it. But anyway, I think we had a little disagreement. But
yeah, it's kind of like Brackman, him. I don't know about, but I don't think Bobo thinks that way. The Western forest.
Told me go ahead. Sorry, you're about to say it.
I've had pictures and everything, and you don't even want to look at them. I was at a conference, and
doesn't consider.
I think I call them slobbery. I mean, they think they have all the Bigfoot, and I bet they're easier to find here than they are there because they're in one certain area. They don't have this big area to roam where it's all pine trees and everything, or
Yeah, they got
Washington,
more greenery up to the northwest.
I know, and
kind of needle and haystack situation more.
In Seattle, 5 blocks in the center of the city, you can get lost in the forest. But here, I could say, to me, Bigfoot are like a tribe of Indians. Different tribes, different territories, a different total structure. But just picture them as Indians. Just like us, they talk. I've had them 50 feet away from me. And we didn't know, 20 minutes away from where I live right now. Went up in the evening. Just check out this canyon. There's always a lot of structures in it. And I got there, and there's this bow hunter, and it was getting dark, but it hadn't, the sun hadn't gone down. I says, see this here? He goes, yeah. So you're seeing notes of that? That's a Bigfoot sign. And I says, usually the ones around here leave something up in a tree, like that one up there. And I pointed up, and there was a branch there or whatever. You could see it was stuck up there. And the guy's eyes got bigger, and he takes off to go hunting. 5 minutes later, comes back. There's no deer. There's no deer. At that time, we heard sound like people 100 yards away, sounded like, and they're just talking. You hear a truck get down below you, and you hear them talking. You just don't quite understand them, but they're there and having a conversation. Heard that, and just, wow, I don't know who that is. I expected to see a vehicle when I went down, because we're at the end of the road, right before the wilderness area. And there was no vehicle. What the hell? That's unusual. The next night, I went up there with my son-in-law and my daughter, and we heard them again. And they were fairly close, and we heard one word that was understandable. And all we heard was, dude. And they talked deeper, like, or dude. It was that type of vocalizations. But it sounded like they were just sitting there having coffee in the morning. Just someone having a conversation back and forth, like over coffee. There was no excitement. They were just, back and forth.
Just a regular conversation in a different language.
They're, just sitting there passing the time. But I go, hey, what's that? Oh, I don't think so. They just parked down below us. So we headed down. There was no vehicle again. So the next night, me and this older gentleman went up there, and I was showing him Bigfoot stuff, and they were pointing out this and that, and they go, I've been hearing these voices over here in this general direction. Let's go check it out. We walked over there, and there's a creek bank. There was no more than 50 feet from us. They weren't scared, and I seen this huge butt print on the bank where they'd been sitting there, the legs hanging over. And in the middle of the dry creek bed, there was a stack of rocks that was piled up one on another.
I'll do that.
So they were there having breakfast while we were on the trail. They didn't seem to bother us or get bothered. I mean,
but they knew no one would probably try to come back there normally.
That area gets blocked off from November to May 1st, I believe, just for the wildlife. And I don't know if the owner, the guy that donated it, he's dead now, but I wonder if he knew they were there. Yeah.
Could have.
That's probably why he donated and kept it so nobody can build on it. But like I say, Bigfoot, I've probably had in person about a dozen or more encounters with them. I just haven't seen them except for the eye shine. And the eye shine was, like I say, about a month before Finding Bigfoot come in. And we're at this Elk Valley Guard Station. And if you go up there, they have a diary. People writing down what they did inside this station. They had a couple bunks. You could stay there and cook a dinner or whatever. And you'd start reading a diary, and these girls go, seeing a big shadow of a bear and weird noises outside the thing. Scariest night ever. There were no bear. It was deer season. I just got out to check out everything. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I'm a night owl. Everybody else kind of got up, and I started shining light. There's an eye shine about 30 yards away. We just stared at each other for at least 3 different blinks. I don't know how much he could see of me. I had a cheap light hitting him, but I could see the eye shine. And my son and this other guy, where are they? I said, right over there. Can't you see the eye shine? And my son just took off full speed, running at it. And seeing him, he's 6'8". Seeing him coming at him, he took off running. I mean, whatever, it took off running. 20 minutes later, over the hill, this is 2:30 in the morning, whatever, over the ridge, we hear a gunshot. Like, say, night deer hunting morning. But it's probably 2:30 in the morning, the first morning. So we hear a gunshot. Nobody's going to be shooting.
Yeah.
And it's just, like I say, over the ridge, and they could have easily made it over there. And nobody's going to be shooting a gun at that time of the morning.
Right. Yeah, that's what I say. Yep. They probably are scared. You mentioned that kind of in the area, some of them where Nathan Reo visited decades later. What's one example of, the spot where you've both been, I guess?
Okay.
Probably I already covered some.
Yeah, I understand. Well, back and forth, we've been doing this before. But yeah, Nathan Reo, when he had his videos out, did a thing, how to find Bigfoot in one day.
Yep.
And he goes, well, I've heard of a lot of stories about Blacksmith Fork. I've never been there. It says, so we'll look on Google. And he looks on this spot, the Google, and says, right over there, that's what they like. The pines, kind of a flat area with a northeast face, and kind of a little, flatter, he could tell from the Google. Says, we'll go there. We'll try that. And he goes there. Sure enough, they find structures. Then they hear a whoop in the background. This is the first time he goes up there, and they hear a whoop.
The right spot, I guess.
It turns out the exact same ridge I was on top of. Evidently, their home is in that little canyon, and he was in the bottom of it, but I was on the top of the ridge where I called him in that day. It's the exact same ridge, and that was 30 years difference, or 40 years.
Here.
Yeah, I think they have the same areas that they up here, but I don't know what right now. I have my suspicions, but I kind of, there's a group called the Cache Valley Bigfoot, yep. And I made comment on where they had a burn or whatever. Can't even think of the burn now, but they controlled burn in an area where if you've ever seen my Facebook thing, the biggest structure I've ever seen in anybody's picture or whatever, I'm standing under it, and it's a double X structure. And I'm, like I say, 6'3" or 6'2", and my head is just the very bottom, and they're full-size trees. You'd have to use a crane to move them, and it's a double X.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, on your Facebook splash page or whatever you call it. Your page. Okay, we had the controlled burn by, like I say, Elk Valley Guard Station. I'm up there, this thing, you could see it right from the road. All of a sudden, it was Card Canyon burn. I went there one day, and it's gone. The double cross is gone. The foresters had to go in there and cut it down. What the hell? I went down the road and there's a big old sign off the side of the road, controlled burn area, stay away. 100 yards down from the big cross, which they took out. The area I'm looking at didn't need burning. There was no overgrowth or anything like that. It was just an excuse for the government to get up in there. And I think they use those helicopters with high-tech infrared, and you can see everything and anything crystal clear. You've seen videos of them. And all they had to do was fly up there. They probably harassed them because where that is, sign or the canyon, over the hill, this is behind Mount Logan. The end of the road, this a-hole, rich guy, builds an A-frame right. It's the only 5-acre spot in that whole mountain that was public or private. He buys it and puts an A-frame right in the middle of the mountain. Uh-huh.
And that was the ridge I always used to go there to find geodes. And there's a Providence Cave, and all that is one little ridge, and he's got his damn A-frame on there.
That'd be annoying.
He's put big fences around there, and then some orange netting, and it wasn't to keep the deer out either.
He probably discovered that he has other visitors sometimes.
Yeah, that he was rich, and then he was probably half a mile from where this controlled burn is. He probably got the Forest Service to take care of them.
Perhaps possible.
Okay, the reason I'm saying this is I told the guy who does find Cache Valley Bigfoot, he put a thing in there this morning saying, I got a chart of all the controlled burn areas that they're going to do in Logan Canyon this year, and every one of them seems to be where we've talked about Bigfoot.
So they're kind of aware of where they're hanging out. Sounds like they probably done some research.
So he says, because he kind of, after I told him, he kind of agreed with me and then noticed all the, like I say, the controlled burn, just like I said they are. They're just disguises to cover up their takeouts.
Yeah, that reminds me of Payson Canyon. I'll just say for a minute, they had a controlled burn there, and it out of hand and burned more than half of the whole canyon. So that's a big canyon, and that's a place that has a lot of activity. Anyway,
they still have a lot of activity there.
It's dropped off quite a bit, but there is some still.
Yeah, where I used to go, I'd find a lot last year where, like I say, had been a lot of activity throughout the years. This year, I didn't see anything. There's nothing fresh. And there's a whole canyon all by itself that nobody goes down because it's so rough. And I'm kind of wondering, I haven't been back to the monument thing I told you about above that camp, where that campground is in Logan Canyon, right? Because I don't want to give names off anymore after everybody, they keep coming up with all these burns, special burns. But I haven't been up there to that spot. I want, like I say, take Reo there. So I don't want to disturb them anymore. Then that's possible. Let them come to us. But last year, I didn't see any fresh sign at all. I'm wondering if they're all took out by government. I'm not being a conspirator, but...
Well, they may have moved, and it's tough to know. When something's burned up, there's probably, well, I guess there's some wildlife, but there's less, plants to eat and things of that nature.
I don't know if they just use that as an excuse and go in there and take them out. Hurt them off, they probably just literally take them out, because it wouldn't do any good to try to hurt them off. They'll come back in the area again.
Impossible.
But since they don't exist, they have no rights. If they don't exist, they can do anything they want to them, and nobody can say a word.
Yeah.
As another example, west of Bug Lake up there, towards there to Randolph, there was an area I'm going, whoa, boy. I started seeing crosses in there and all sorts of stuff. And I go, there's something moved in here. This is going to be a good area. The next year I went up there, and everything in a 3-mile area along the road, every bush, every tree had been cut down. Just totally bare. So I don't know if that's another attempt to keep them out of there or what. This, like I say, not saying it's conspiracy theory, but it sure seems too many coincidences.
Yeah.
So now I don't try to say anything about where they're at. Some areas it's already too late.
Yeah. I remember last time when we spoke, one of the last times, you told a story about, I think, a friend who actually saw the Bigfoot, and they were observing you kind of by the campfire, and you were he was entertained. He could tell by you. Do you remember that?
Oh, well, there's a couple times.
Okay. Well,
another time we're across in Idaho, and we're way off the main road. It's where Preston gets their water. And we were camped there, and all of a sudden there was 3 of us camped there, and the one guy was totally out, and he had a German Shepherd. And all of a sudden that German Shepherd just started cowering and whimpering and got behind me. And you could tell you couldn't see, because like I say, Bigfoot generally stay at 30 yards. That's their safe limit, I think. Every time I've experienced them, go back and they're about 30 yards away.
About right.
If you think about all the times you've seen them or whatever, they're about, like I say, 30 yards. I don't know, it's just maybe the way they do it.
Yeah, I had one, must have been a Bigfoot, run by me with a bipedal swish, 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 swish through the grass, and I bet it was about what you're saying right there. They kind of hit the edge of the clearing and went right back into the wood line, and I was camping alone because nobody else showed up, and I didn't want to cancel out. But anyway, go ahead with the story.
Camping alone, I'm sorry, but after I've discovered Bigfoot, I don't do that anymore. My wife dared me to stay at Elk Valley Guard Station one night, during the season by myself. I did it, but once you know they exist, it's pretty hard to relax to the point where you're not going to be worried.
Yeah, won't sleep that night. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, once anybody's ever experienced them, they'll have a hard time to go up there by themselves anyway, which I used to do all the time. Didn't think nothing of it. Now I do. But Bigfoot, the structures I've found some are boundary markers, some of them just playing, some of them are leaving messages. You got to think about it. If they can speak, they have a language, they can talk to other Bigfoot and pass on news or pass on information. And the structures they leave mean something they know, but we don't. They have a way of writing, whatever you might call it. That's civilization. And I bet you they're interconnected a lot throughout the country, better than we'd think. Unless they're isolated. They might not have quick responses. Just think of Indians back in the old days before man was here. That's basically what they are, is a tribe or tribes of Indian. Are same thing as an Indian, except they don't look like us. They're human. It might be a different type of human, but I'm pretty sure they're human. That's why all the DNA tests come up, says, well, it's been ruined by human DNA. That's because they're
Basically,
part human.
yeah.
Everybody goes, what's They got to be Gigantopithecus. No, they don't. They could be Bigfoot or Bigfoot. But as I was saying, their structures, I've got pictures I could show you. The ones are boundary markers. I've been watching this one for 30 years. It's not that far from where my brother heard them back and forth. One side of the road is a boundary, and the other side of the road is a boundary. And one side of the road, all the tree, there was crosses and these boundary markers. On the other side, all the tree branches broke off in the same area. I mean, the same angle, pointing the other way. Like I say, that's our territory, whatever.
Didn't you say there's actually a road, a dirt road or something going?
Yeah, it was a dirt road.
And it's a handy boundary marker, it sounds like.
It is. It's,
and they'll put their sign up.
They argue kind of whose land's what. I seen up there above this plane crash they called Pat Hollow. And above it, on the top of the ridge there, I see a big old tree knocked over in the same position as a boundary marker. It's right on top of the ridge. The next year, I got pictures of it. The next year,